Welcome to the KFA Podcast, where our mission is to keep faith alive by kicking ass.
We are here with MyADU, and we are going to have a chitty chat with them today and figure out what's going on in the ADU world.
That's right.
So, who are we? Who are you guys?
So we are MyADU. We're
Introduce yourself.
Okay. My name is Luke Shaffer, and I am one of the founders and the president of MyADU.
Right on. And who is this lovely lady?
I am Amanda Durfee, and I do all the sales, marketing, and operations office management. I work alongside Luke, part of the core team of the company.
Right on. And we already know who this guy is here.
Mr. Larry Hales, podcast host. Thanks
Mr.
for coming.
Devon Rowe,
Thanks for coming here.
another podcast host with Cardinal Financial. So, okay, we're just having a conversation. We're just chatting. We want to learn about MyADU. So we're just going to open it up, and you guys tell us a little bit about what's going on. We're going to interject, ask some questions, and then we'll try to educate the world out there on ADUs in Clark County and the surrounding area.
Well, first,
So-
what is an ADU
That's
by
a great way to
definition?
start.
I
Yeah.
hear the term ADU thrown out a lot.
Yeah, we get that question a lot.
Especially with our name being MyADU, people often are like, well, what's MyADU? And then we get to go into explaining it. So it's a good way to advertise a little bit and explain what ADU means.
Yeah. So it's an acronym for Accessory Dwelling Unit, which basically means it's not the primary unit on the property, but it is a full dwelling unit, which means it includes accommodations for sleeping, cooking, bathroom, etc.
Like an apartment
Yeah, exactly.
in your backyard.
Yep. Yeah, we like to call them backyard homes
Backyard homes.
because it kind of captures the idea a little bit better.
That's a really good explanation, actually, because a lot of people can't. They when they think of ADU, they think of something that's attached to the house.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they can be. So
Okay,
you
they
can
can
have an attached ADU, or a lot of people will convert a basement or a garage into an ADU, but they can also be detached, which is actually what we specialize in.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And it's not a shed. You're
Right.
planting on,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. So it's not a tough shed. A lot of people are like, oh, I've got a tough shed. It can be an ADU. No, it's a little bit more than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Full plumbing, electrical,
Mhm.
everything.
Yep.
Just basically a house in the backyard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So why do people do these? Why do people build ADUs?
Yeah, man, they can apply to a lot of different scenarios. What we have found primarily is that we're working with families that want more space for their family in some way, shape, or form. So, moving mom and dad into the backyard,
Okay.
college-age kid, that graduates school and can't afford their own house right now, and so, you can build an ADU in the backyard. Even, high school kids, maybe you outgrow your house, you need some more bedrooms, you build an ADU in the backyard. But that's just, the family piece is just one piece of it, because it could also be a rental. You could build it, rent it out, either as a short-term rental, like an Airbnb, or they can be long-term rentals, just like a regular rental house. Yeah.
And how many of the people that you build ADUs for build for rentals as opposed to expanding the family, wanting stuff for?
Right now, among our clientele, it's probably about 90-10. So the vast majority are building for family.
Okay.
And we've only had a few build for the rental opportunity.
And going down that road, have you penciled that out?
We
or
have,
do they
yeah.
do that, or how does that work?
Yeah, I've actually been surprised that that's kind of our ratio, because it pencils out so well. Obviously not quite as well now with interest rates the way they are today as they were a few years ago. But when we started out a few years ago, it was an absolute no-brainer on the investment side of things, because you could build the ADU and cash flow instantly. You weren't waiting for a 4, 5, 6, 10-year, gain equity, pay off your mortgage, and then you're cash flowing on your rental. Like it's instant. So it's a little bit less now, but it's still right there. It doesn't take long for you to be in the black. Yeah.
Okay.
Even today.
Even today.
Yeah, I mean, but so cost-wise, I know there's a huge range, but like, what are we looking at? The cheapest, the most expensive? What's a range of something like this going to cost?
Yeah. I mean, obviously it depends on how big you're building, because you can build ADUs of all different sizes. I think by code, the minimum square footage is only I think it's less than 200 square feet, which is
Okay.
tiny. But as long as you have meet that requirement, then it can be an ADU. All the way up to currently 800 square feet, but that's changing to be 1,000 square feet.
It actually depends on how big your lot size is. They've actually recently changed it to, if you have a larger lot size that's over 10,000 square feet, it bumps it up to 1,000 square foot ADU, and then it continues to bump up to a 1,200 square foot ADU.
Yeah, and that varies by jurisdiction. So
It does.
What Amanda was just talking about, I think, is Clark County.
Yep, City of Vancouver is still the
yeah.
800 max, but Clark County has raised it.
Yeah.
And where do you guys service right now?
Right now, we're mainly in Southwest Washington.
Okay.
So Clark County and the surrounding counties, Cowlitz and Skamania. But we are recently licensed in Oregon, and so we are starting to push into the Portland metro area as well.
Okay. So, and where are you wanting to take this? How big are you guys wanting to grow this company?
All over the place.
Yeah.
Nationwide,
That's-
let's take
that's
over.
kind of the
Let's just
limit.
open 'em
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, because we think it's such a cool thing. I think everybody should be building ADUs. And so as we can grow, we're trying to get our feet under us, establish a solid foundation, but then, we'd love to expand up and down the I-5 corridor, maybe Central Oregon, and then beyond, possibly even, with maybe a franchise model.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So starting with just your crew, growing your crew, and then
Yep.
turning it into a franchise
Yeah.
potentially.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
well, that would be interesting. So how far have you gone down that road?
We've taken a few steps that way, but still pretty early stages of that.
So what got you into ADUs? Why? Because you just said, I think everybody should have one. Why do you think that?
So our company is built off the back of a residential home building custom builder company. My dad has built houses his whole career. So I grew up in the construction industry.
Okay.
And tried to get out of it for a little while, but kept getting pulled back in because
Good luck.
that was my experience, and there's a lot of aspects to it that I really love. I love being a part of providing housing for people. I think it's just a really important part of our economy and of our, everybody needs a place to live, right?
Absolutely.
And so being part of creating spaces for people to live has been a passion of mine. Through a series of, working in different parts of the construction industry, I ended up back working with Dad, building custom homes. And as he kind of looked at retirement, I took a look at, what do I want to do going forward, and what's something I could specialize in. So about that time, I was really interested in like the tiny house movement, like tiny houses on trailers, where you had to kind of get really creative with how to package everything in a small space. So I was really into that, and about that time, I had a friend up in Seattle that was like, hey, my parents are going to build this ADU in their backyard. It's a pretty cool idea. And it just kind of, there's this light bulb moment for me where I was like, that's really interesting. So I started digging into ADUs and went, not a lot of people are specializing in this. People can build them. A lot of people were, homeowners were building them themselves.
Okay.
Because they were like, I want this, and there's some cool resources around. Portland is one of the epicenters in the nation for ADUs. There's some really cool resources. There's a guy over in Portland named Cole Peterson that has kind of made himself the expert in ADUs. And so there was just a lot of good information to dive into, and I realized nobody was really doing it here in Clark County, at least not the way that I thought that it could be done. And
like a side benefit or side
it was
job,
kind
but
of
not
like,
main-
there
not
were
main
other
focus.
construction companies that were, building ADUs, but it wasn't their bread and butter. And I went, we could take this and make it the thing that we do, and probably spread awareness a lot faster than just one category of, type of project that somebody does, on their website. So we dove in.
And how long ago was this?
This started developing back in about 2018.
Okay.
And then we kind of
So
launched.
fairly new.
Yeah, pretty recently. Well, the rules have just recently changed, right?
Because you could not build an ADU
Yeah.
in your backyard up until, maybe 5 years ago? Right
Yeah,
around there?
it depends on where you were and what
Yeah.
jurisdiction you were in. People had different rules, but it was pretty limited.
It was.
And
yeah.
so all of a sudden the rules started changing, as we started hitting this housing crisis and the state, I mean, all the way up to the state level started going, man, we need other options for density. And so the ADU rules started changing, and that was about the time I started getting interested in it.
Yep.
So it's relatively new. It's not just that nobody was doing it, it's that the rules have changed.
And you said Oregon pretty much pioneered this.
Oregon, in a lot of ways, California as well. And then they've had some forward-looking ADU legislation, but then Washington just this past year kind of stepped up their game. And here in Washington, we passed one of the strongest ADU legislation bills in the country.
Let's talk about that.
So,
they're saying it's stronger than Oregon and California, which have been ahead of all of us. So with that being said, there's a lot of changes coming.
Yeah.
Let's dig into that. What do you know about these changes?
Well, they all of the jurisdictions and counties have options to choose a little bit from them, but there's some flat out rules that will actually say you cannot do anything but this. They're allowing people to build up to 2 ADUs on their lot, whether that's 1 attached or 1 detached, or if it's 2 detached or 2 attached. You can still have 2 ADUs. In some areas you can build 2 ADUs right now, but 1 has to be attached. But now they're saying, nope, that doesn't get to be the case anymore. You can do that. They're not putting limitations on the height of it, which in many cases, they don't want your ADU to be taller than the main house, so it can't be taller than the main house. Now they're saying you can't put a height limitation on it.
Within a certain amount, I think the height limitation is actually 24 feet.
Yeah,
which
so it's still
basically
capped.
allows you to build a two-story.
Yep. Yeah.
So they basically said, regardless of the height of the main house, you can build a 2-story ADU.
Okay. Okay. And this is all happening when? It's done, or it's in the works, or it's...
Yeah, so this was voted in last April, or April of this year, of 2023, was put into effect. Statewide. With the caveat that the way that it's rolling out is that they're requiring jurisdictions, as they update their urban growth plan, as they update their plan, they have to incorporate these rules. So it's going to roll out at different times in different jurisdictions with no absolute deadline of when that's happening.
Do you have any idea how that works with CC&Rs and HOAs and all that?
Yeah, so the way that I read the bill right now, and of course I'm not a legal expert, but the way that I read it, it looks like HOAs that have certain rules in place right now get to keep those, but anything moving forward as of, I think, July of this year, when that legislation was enacted, any new HOAs or organizations cannot be more restrictive than these state level rules.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else that we should know about these new?
There's
Laws
plenty
and
more. And
changes?
again, there's a lot of them that we're still researching and looking into, asking the county about. We are very interested in learning more about what does Clark County say, City of Camas, City of Vancouver, because again, it's in urban growth areas. It's not in the rural areas, so that's not going to change or affect those.
Yeah.
They may end up changing theirs anyways, but they're a little bit slower. They're a little bit more behind. They want to keep their rules and their zoning codes to what they have right now. So we'll see.
One of the cool things that's changing is that right now jurisdictions are allowed to require that the homeowner live on the property if you're going to build, or the property owner rather, has to be on the property to build an ADU.
One of the two?
Yep, either live in the ADU or in the main
and that's
house.
Currently the way it is?
They're allowed to. Now, several of the jurisdictions around here don't do that. City of Vancouver, Clark County don't have that, but City of Camas, City of Washougal have that requirement. Call it an owner occupancy requirement.
Okay.
And this new legislation says that you can't do that anymore.
Wow.
And that'll open it up for basically landlords to be able to put another door on their property
Well,
of
how
a
would that
rental
work
house.
if somebody wanted to sell that home in Camas?
I'm not entirely sure.
I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
No.
Yeah, so they have to sell it to somebody who's going to
Who's
occupy
going
one
to
and rent
occupy.
it. They couldn't sell that property to an investor.
I suppose so.
Yeah.
I would love to
Interesting.
ask somebody that question.
Interesting. Yeah, well, maybe somebody
Yeah.
listening to this knows that.
Yeah,
and can,
absolutely.
comment on it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, now real estate agents are going to have to be up to speed on some of these new rules too.
sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Not only that, but if somebody's looking at a property knowing, oh, this has the ability to put a duplex. So basically what you're saying is you
Exactly.
could build a duplex,
Yep.
two unit, you could put 2 doors in your backyard.
Yep. Yeah, and they've increased the maximum allowable size up to 1,000 square feet. So essentially, in the right scenario, you could build a 2,000 square foot
per
duplex. Yeah, 1,000 square feet per unit. So
Okay.
you could build
2,000 square feet in your backyard.
you get 2,000 square
If
feet.
you
in your
have the
backyard.
room, you can't go over lot coverage, of course, but if you have the space to
Okay.
build, then you can build it.
Yeah.
And what are setbacks right now in Clark County?
It depends on the zoning.
It's all different as well?
It's all different. Yeah.
Okay.
Wait,
But,
what's a setback?
oh, that's a great question.
is a great
There you go.
question.
Well, you dig in.
Okay,
This is
so
your world.
so the setbacks are, you can only build so close to your property line, so they make you maintain a certain kind of margin between any structure and your property line. For mainly, it's a fire code thing, so that buildings aren't built too close to each other.
Gotcha. So that you don't have like 2 things butting smack
exactly.
up to one
Yeah,
another.
yeah.
Because this is you're putting in a foundation and
Correct.
everything. It's not something that you can just pick up and move
Right.
over 3 feet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, our particular product is built in place. We build conventionally, just like a normal house. So yeah, we've got the full foundation, crawl space, built up from there.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so the way that you guys did it is you systemized it.
We did.
That's what I like about this
Yeah.
is you're like, well, we've got like these 10 floor plans.
Yeah,
10?
we're up to about 15 now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you just pick one and you already know how much lumber,
Yeah.
what the cost is going to be approximately, like everything is completely systemized, which I think is
Yeah.
absolutely genius.
Yeah, it's kind of the best of both worlds, coming from the custom home building world, where you start from scratch every time. You design something cool, then you have to figure out how to build it. It's the middle ground where we've already designed it. We already know what it's going to take to build, which means I already know the budget. The only variance is what's it going to take to hook up to utilities on your specific property. And other than that, then it streamlines the whole process because we're building these same units over and over.
And do you get like discounts on permits or any of that kind of stuff since you already have a home on there? How does Clark County
Yeah.
work with
Yeah.
it?
That would be really nice. Yeah, I was
Any
gonna
kind of
say,
a break at all?
especially because
on-
they know us so well. So yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah.
No.
No, we don't specifically. Our company doesn't, but ADUs in general do. Yes.
Okay.
So they get a discount on permit fees and impact fees, and that depends on jurisdiction right now. And there's also some of that in this new legislation as well. That's kind of limiting the amount of fees that can be paid for or charged by a jurisdiction for an ADU. I think they have it at 50%
Yeah,
right now.
they can't-
of like a primary residence.
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
some areas that still charge the same impact fees. I think it was City of Ridgefield that we were working with, and they charge the same impact fees due to the new schools they're being built, but they charge them for the ADUs themselves just as they would the main home.
Wow.
And so it's quite a bit more for that permit cost.
Yeah, and so you can kind of see the difference, and in contrast, like the city of Vancouver doesn't charge any impact fees, so because they're kind of incentivizing ADUs a little bit more. So, talking nuts and bolts, ADU permit in city of Vancouver is between $2,500 and $2,800, and in a jurisdiction like city of Ridgefield, it's about $30,000.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So
That's a different
yeah,
world.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
that's a make or break on the deal.
absolutely,
Especially
And it
when,
has-
homeowners will come out to us and say, oh, well, I was talking with my friend and they live down the road. They just happen to be in Clark County and one's in city. And they're like, well, we want to build this and it's similar. And then they ask for a quote. Well, it's, again, $30,000 more. Well, how is this? They don't, we have to then explain it and be the bearer of bad news and say, well, this is why.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So
Wow.
that's one of the things that this state legislation is trying to address.
Well,
Kind of
that
even
almost,
the playing
that
field
almost
across
seems like
that.
Ridgefield's saying without saying, we don't want them.
Yeah, I think that's part of what they're able to do. Like
Not
they're,
saying we're not
they're-
going to allow them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jurisdictions are kind of able to vote on whether they want them based on what they charge for them.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then nobody's the bad guy
Yeah, exactly.
except for,
Well,
yeah.
Yep.
now correct me if I'm wrong. Some of the lots, at least in the newer areas in Ridgefield, are a lot smaller. Is there a minimum lot size or a maximum lot size?
There is a minimum lot size,
Okay.
but it's pretty small.
Okay.
Yeah.
We don't run into that very often. It's really only the setbacks that get us on some of those smaller lots. It's not really the lot size or the square footage of the lot itself, but it's where the house is placed. Many of the older properties, they put the house all the way in the back of the property, and then they have a decent sized front yard, but maybe it's long and narrow, and you can't put the ADU in front of the main house. It has to be behind or beside it, so then they don't have the space
That's a
to
rule?
build.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if that's changing at all. I don't see any changes to that in this new legislation. So yeah, the whole idea is there's still kind of a visual subordination is kind of the word that they use, that they want for ADUs. They don't want them to, kind of be the primary thing on the property.
Okay.
It's still supposed to be accessory.
Yes.
And so beside or behind kind of keeps the main house.
And so a 5,000 square foot lot, you can put an ADU on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. If there's room.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, if you attach, then a lot of times you can build an ADU as a addition or something like that.
And you guys do the attached as well?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So we don't do conversions.
Like a garage conversion?
Like a garage or
Okay.
basement, which is a great way to get an ADU. Like, I'm not opposed to them, but just our business model is that we focus on new construction. So we will attach, but we primarily do detached.
And then how do you guys warranty stuff since you're doing new construction?
Yeah, so we warranty it similar to how we would, a full-blown house.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got our own structural warranty that we carry, and then all our manufacturers have their own product warranties that are exactly the same as if you built a custom home.
Okay. So like most new construction here has like a 12-month. Everything's
Yep.
covered for the
Yep.
first 12 months.
Exactly.
Do a walkthrough right before the end.
Yep.
And then,
Yep. And that's
Make sure
exactly what
it's
we do. Yeah, we've
same
got
thing.
a 1 year. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. And then they can buy. Can you buy those like extended warranties for ADUs as well?
I believe so. Yes, I've actually talked to a couple of warranty companies, and it hasn't worked out for us to offer those, but consumers could go directly to them.
Because I know a lot of people in the real estate world, like
Mhm.
the sellers will buy that as a perk, or the real estate
Sure.
agent will buy it as a perk
Sure.
for
Yeah.
the buyer, just for
Yep.
peace of mind.
Yep.
So I don't know. Just
Yeah,
an
and I
idea,
believe
but
you can do that for the ADUs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be cool.
So have you found when you take and put one of these ADUs, let's say it costs $100,000 to put the ADU on, does that transfer over to the value of the home like almost immediately?
Yeah, we've seen that. Yeah, it doesn't in property value, which is actually a good thing because then you're not paying as
Taxes.
much
Taxes, yeah.
property taxes.
Yeah.
But that's starting to catch up a little bit. The assessors are starting to see the value of the ADU, so we are starting to see an uptick in the property taxes. But we've seen the sale value of the property follow immediately. We've had a couple of our previous clients sell their homes after we built an ADU, and just based on us looking at what we think their property was worth before and then what they sold it for.
Right.
It was almost a direct correlation to how much the ADU cost.
Oh man, you talk about a selling point?
Yeah.
Like forget
Well-
about it. Like I'm touring a house, I'm like, wait, I can have my own space out here. Like this is my own
Exactly.
office. Or
So the only
Yeah.
negative from our side that I'm seeing is that they haven't fully caught up yet because there's not enough comparables when the appraisers
Yeah.
go out there.
Yeah.
There's not, because you have to have like-kind properties, right?
Mhm.
So if,
Yep.
like, how many ADUs are in a 1 mile radius
Mhm.
or a 5 mile radius?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes in a 1 mile radius, there isn't
Yeah.
any. So now you're doing a lot of adjustments to that appraisal to make
Right.
it work.
Right.
And so the value's not fully there. But
Yeah.
when you come across from the different angle and do the cap rate
Mhm.
side, if you're coming from an investor standpoint,
Mhm.
then you're like, hey, look at this as 2 units, like a duplex.
Right.
Let's pencil this out as investment.
Yeah. Mhm.
Then it makes sense.
Yeah,
Right.
totally.
But when you're just trying to get full value out of that, having an ADU, it will happen. I just don't
It
think
will.
there's enough of them out there
Yeah.
yet to get full value. It's maybe in Portland there is.
Right,
Yeah.
but,
But
here
here,
in Clark County, yeah,
you don't
it's
always
starting to
get it.
catch up. I mean, just
Yep.
in the past 3 years, we've seen it change dramatically, and even the appraisers that I've talked to are starting to talk about it. Like, I'll meet appraisers, and they're like, "Oh yeah, like I'm trying to get caught up on the ADU thing because we've got to be able to appraise these appropriately." So I'm starting to hear the right language
Good.
from the people in the industry that that matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a big deal
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And I always look at it from the real estate agent side as if I'm a real estate agent, I need to know about this kind of stuff. Number one, need to know about the changes in the rules and like what I can and can't do. Because
Mhm.
when I'm selling a property, helping my buyers buy a property in Ridgefield,
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
and they're asking questions about ADUs. If I'm a real estate agent, I know, it's going to cost an extra
Right,
30 grand to
exactly.
do this in Ridgefield versus just saying, oh, yeah, I think you can do that. Yeah,
Yeah, not knowing.
Yeah.
Especially when a lot of the people we've talked to and a handful of the people we've built for specifically were interested in buying a new property in order to build their ADU. So they didn't even have a lot yet. They came to us, said, this is what we want. They then, caught up with us 6 months, a year later, and then we built for them. But for those realtors, they need to know that, especially when they're trying to sell that lot.
Right.
What
Yeah.
can I build? How big? And what's the, limitations to that?
Right. And that's something that you guys could totally do. Like,
Right.
you'll do a feasibility study.
Exactly.
for
We
somebody.
do that all
Yeah.
the time. And we've worked with several people that we've looked at multiple properties that they've been interested in buying to see if building an ADU is feasible on that property. We've had a couple of clients where then they bought the property based on our recommendation, and we built an ADU for them.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you guys, up front, while people are out shopping, you guys
Yeah,
are willing
exactly.
to go out
Yeah,
and do this.
I tell people that all
Yeah.
the time.
Stuff,
Like,
okay.
while you're shopping, if you need an ADU, you don't have to find a property that already has one. Just keep us in the loop. We'll keep you, updated on, just send us the listing. Say, hey, this is a property we're looking at. We can generally, even without setting foot on the property, do a feasibility study in about 10 minutes
Use
and
Google
know
Maps.
what's possible.
Yeah.
So
Google
how-
Maps.
Yeah, Google Maps, the county GIS.
The county GIS is the most
different
beneficial,
places.
yeah.
Oh,
Clark
because
it
has
gives you
the
everything.
best GIS
It
in the
does.
So
country.
good.
It's
you guys.
so
good.
easy
We're so
and nice.
spoiled
Yep.
here.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's
I
very
love
true.
it.
All the other areas are like, can I just find the lot? I just want to find it.
Yep.
Tell me the
Gosh.
zoning if
By the
it's
way,
in.
when it was down, because it was
Oh, I
down
know.
A
Yeah.
few weeks ago,
That was
we didn't realize
horrible.
how much we relied on it, and then
I
it was
didn't
like,
either.
That was
is
so
the GIS
bad.
back up yet? Nope, not yet.
Yeah. That was a
It was
long week.
Yeah. It
was
And I
terrible.
talked to some of the people down at the county because I had to go down there afterwards and talk with some of the permitting techs down there. And they were saying how a lot of people had to just go home and take time off because there was nothing they could do about it.
Yep.
It was completely shut down. Some people worked on filing because that's all they had to do. So,
Just to keep their hours.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We live in such a digital world now
Yeah.
that goes down, and what do you do?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
We
go,
are
"Oh."
super spoiled, though. I mean,
Yeah.
it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like, I go to another county and I'm like, wait, you don't have this?
Right?
yeah.
Right? I know.
Well, especially being able to look at the sales history of something, and like Luke was saying, we can see what it was just sold for. If it was one of our properties that we built on, we can see how much did they gain from it. Again, the property value versus the sale value and such.
Yeah. Yeah. So back to the original question, like, yes, as people are shopping, we would love to be involved in that process because we
Okay.
can let you know what you can do on any given property pretty quickly.
So we need to figure out a way to get, more of the real estate community involved with you guys up front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Educated, obviously,
Exactly.
way more than they are currently.
Mm.
So then I think it'd be super
Yeah.
beneficial for you guys
Yep.
just to have that whole community in your
Yep.
back pocket.
Yeah.
So, and
Maybe they'll
obviously-
put an ADU in their own backyard.
Maybe they
Yeah.
will.
There you go.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I wish I would have had this option, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I would have built and put my mom in my backyard and just had her
Yeah, absolutely.
right nice and close. And
Yep.
she had her own space,
Mhm. Yep.
which is exactly what she wanted, and would have been brand new. Are you kidding? She would like, oh, my son built me my own house in
Yeah.
his backyard.
I know.
That's one of the things that many people say too, is that they wish they would have done it. Because time goes so quickly, and then you're like, I want to do this, and then all of a sudden it's a couple of years later, and all of a sudden your parents need a little bit more care than they did before.
It's too late.
And it's too late, because if they spend so much time and energy trying to build this with us, then it takes away from what they're doing with their parents currently. And it's unfortunate because putting their parents into a care facility is, $5, $7, $8, I don't know, $10,000 a month just to have
Oh,
them
yeah.
be cared for,
Yep.
Yeah.
when they could have them in their backyard,
Yep.
and then they're caring for them themselves.
You can hire somebody
Yes.
to come and
Yeah.
take care of
Yep.
them
Yep.
in your own place
Yep.
at that point for
Yeah.
that same amount of money. And
or
that's
less. Yeah.
or
A
less.
lot
yeah,
less,
or
yeah.
less.
Yeah.
Because they
How-
might not need around-the-clock care.
Yeah.
Right.
Come a few times a
Yep.
week and check on
Yep.
them. And
just check on them.
Yeah.
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 A lot of people started to catch the vision, or their perspective shifted during COVID, when all of a sudden, mom and dad that were in a care facility, like, you couldn't go see them
Nope.
Yeah.
because the facility shut down. They don't let outside visitors, and we started, getting people being like, "Oh, I wish mom and dad were in my backyard," instead of in the facility.
Oh, yeah.
So we've seen more people kind of exploring this, even just because of that.
Well, the way that I would look at it is, let's say my mom owned a house. She could either sell her house or we could do a reverse mortgage, however we want to do it. Take that money and put it into the ADU that's in my backyard. Now,
Right.
she's not necessarily losing her equity completely. We're just transferring the equity over to somebody else who's going to
Yeah.
take care of her.
But the reverse mortgage has to be owner occupied. So you got to remember that.
Okay.
That doesn't work.
See, this is why we keep you around.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
But you're right, though, is that many times people do that. The parents will sell their house. It takes a lot of effort on the kids' end. And I just spoke with somebody this morning. He's probably 60. His parents are 85. But he says, I'm just pulling their teeth out, trying to get them to move up here. They live in Portland. They need to be next to me. They can take care of themselves, but I want them close.
Right.
So it's going to
Yeah.
take some work. And we're not, jumping on everybody saying, you have to build it now. We have patience. We understand it takes time. Can take a couple of years to decide. So if mom and dad are to sell their house, then they can actually use that money to then invest into their new place on
Right.
their kids' lot. And if it's a matter of inheritance, there's ways to go about that with your siblings if they want to hash it out saying, well, you're getting all the inheritance. There's ways to go around that.
Right.
So,
We just make sure mom and dad are taken care of.
yep,
first and
that's
foremost.
that's the key.
Yep.
Well, we've got a bunch of financing options too, where we could pull some of that money in advance to give you guys the money to build.
Sure.
Well, so they're not homeless in the meantime,
Exactly.
or with the kids when they're like, I don't really have room for them for. How long does it take? A year? I mean, how long does an ADU take?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our
Yeah.
process, it really depends on the permitting process because
Clark County.
So let's take Clark County
Yep.
as an example. We've got about a 3 to 4 month permitting process before we can even.
Is that now or is
start.
that normal?
It's become
That's a
normal.
quick one, yeah. I would say
That's-
that's a little bit quicker than, some of them have been even taking a little bit longer. It depends on the property, it depends on what they ask for. Some of the properties are a little bit smoother, but Clark County requires you to do a building permit as well as a land use permit. So you're working with two different areas of the county. They don't communicate with each other, so you're answering the
Of
same
course.
questions to one or the other. I recently spoke with somebody that works down there who's kind of the head of the building department, and he said land use wasn't going to have a say in it anymore. Wait till next year on some of these, then you won't have to worry about that. And I guess they're taking out the land use permits for the ADUs.
Yeah, which will help streamline it
Yeah.
quite a bit. But still, it's just in Clark County, just the volume of permits that they're processing, it takes a while, right?
Okay, and then the
so-
build time. So let's just say you're
Yeah.
at 4 months.
Yep, so you're at 4 months, then our build time is between 3 and 4 months.
Okay.
Because we're building from the ground up, conventionally, we're not coming in with anything modular. So it's a typical construction process. Stick built. Yep, the whole 9 yards. And so our goal would be to get it down to 90 days. But right now, with the way the industry is and how busy everybody is, we just can't do that. So we're a little more than that. So.
What about Cowlitz County when you jump up there? How much does that change just from Clark to Cowlitz?
We're still kind of getting data on that. We haven't
Okay.
built enough up there to know, have a trend.
Okay.
We did just recently permit one up there, and it took a little longer than we expected.
But was it cheaper?
It was a
It was a
little
little-
bit cheaper.
yeah.
Because from what I hear, and I don't know anything about this, I'm just like Cowlitz is like way better than Clark in almost everything.
Sure.
When it comes to building,
Yeah.
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 Quicker, cheaper,
The
more relaxed. Some
the
of the
kind of
guidelines.
the flip side of that is that because they're a smaller jurisdiction in the sense that they have smaller population, they're not as geared up at the county level
Okay.
to process stuff. So depending on where you're permitting, they're sending building plans, out to Olympia to get reviewed,
Okay.
rather than doing it in-house. So it's things like that that can sometimes still take a while, even though you would think, oh, there's, 2 people that work in that department at the county. I should be able to just call them and get it done.
Totally.
Some of that stuff is outsourced, is what we've found. So yeah, we're still it's been a good experience working with them up there, but we haven't seen a hugely significant difference
in pricing.
in pricing and
Okay.
time frame. Yeah.
And everybody in the county here.
Well, I mean, we
They-
know
yeah.
a lot of people.
We have
interact
a
with
good
lot of the same
handful of people that we can
Yeah.
reach out to. Some of the permit techs, they're all nice, but they don't always know the right answer or questions. And so working with them on the initial intake appointment, they can be kind of reading a script and being like, well, this isn't there, but maybe it's just written up differently towards what is now asked for. So a lot of times there's a roundabout way to go, talking to the next level up and saying, okay, is this okay? And then they can kind of fly it through a little bit faster.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You think they're still learning about the process too, maybe?
I think so. I think there's a little bit of turnover in staffing as well. And so we've noticed that there are times when it feels like we know more about their permitting process than they do, just because we've been doing it for so long.
Sure.
And that's it can be frustrating for us, but, I'm not trying to, diss anybody. It's just, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
And so, we don't know everybody, but we do this over and over and over.
Sure.
And that's actually one of the things that we talk about all the time is we like that we get to do that for our customers, right? Like, I can't imagine being a homeowner and being like, I'm going to permit my own ADU, or, basically any building project, to be honest, and try to go down to the county or the city.
Yeah, where do I start? What do I do?
What do you do? Like, the fact that we still, run into the snags that we run into, even though we do it all the time.
There's not a checklist for a homeowner, from start to finish, just to walk in.
Yeah.
You're going to miss, you don't know.
Exactly.
You're going to miss a ton of stuff. You didn't even know to ask.
You didn't even
know to go to this
Didn't
department.
even know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Especially like we were talking about with the building permit. It's like you go in for a building permit. I just want to build an ADU. They don't even know that there's a land use. So you can get really into your building permit, and then they're like, we can't give this to you until you get land use to approve. And you're like, I didn't even know. So then you have to track all the way back to land use.
Yeah.
So
So,
doing your own permit would be horrible. I did my own permit for our ADU, but I do it all the time, so I knew how to pull my own permit.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Financing options.
Yeah, we have them.
So you have them.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I do. So, Cardinal Financial. That's since I'm not wearing anything but a Levi's
Levi's
shirt.
Financial.
Right.
Yeah, and it doesn't say it, I don't think here.
Yeah.
So anyway, Cardinal Financial, we've got a lot of options for financing ADUs.
Yeah.
So that's cool, and that's kind of how we all got this conversation started anyway with this
Right.
relationship was, hey, we have financing options.
Yeah.
So we can definitely do it for as little as, 5% down. Got some excellent options to get
Cool.
some financing and just for the ADUs. So essentially it's the renovation products. It's that line of financing that we're going under. And one of them is just to build a complete detached ADU, and it's part of the choice renovation products and conventional loans, and it's totally doable. So easy. It's actually pretty easy.
Like you already own a house, now you just become an investor. And
Yeah, so you can do a
adding door.
refinance into it if you already own the house,
Yeah.
or you can do a purchase at the same time financing that ADU
Yeah.
as part of that purchase. So both ways.
Yeah, that's what I think people don't realize that you can do is the purchase at the same time as the main house, which that is something I would love to continue to learn more about that. I've gained a little bit of information from you, but continuing to educate those who call us and say, how can I go about doing this? A lot of times in the past, especially it's a refinance or a HELOC or a construction loan, but sometimes some of the people we send them to are not as consistent with those, and so we want to have good resources. We have a great list of resources. You guys have been great. So continuing to educate us so we can educate them is a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so part of what, and obviously we've already talked about this as well, but and you guys a little bit, but to tell the community is to get more classes going where we can train realtors, because that's where most people start. Is with the
Absolutely.
realtor, asking them the questions. So if we've got a couple thousand of them in the area, and if we can do enough training to get them educated, I think that's really going to expand the ADU community greatly.
Yeah.
Just getting them talking about it, knowledgeable about it, and sharing about it up front. Hey, have you thought about this?
Right.
And bringing it up.
Yep.
Because it's just, again, you don't know what you don't know. So people might not even think of that option, but if a realtor, as they're talking, can be like, oh, well, your mom and dad are doing this, and you're over here, you want to do this. Have you thought about doing this together?
Yeah.
They might not have.
Right.
And it could just be the perfect marriage where we could afford this little house over here, we don't really like it. They can afford this little thing, but together, we can
Exactly.
both get what we want.
Yep.
And so there is a lot of that I don't think people are even thinking about.
Yeah. That all goes back to what is an ADU.
Correct.
And the education and being able to share that. A lot of the people we work with have found out about ADUs through their neighbor who we built for. You know, being like, well, I heard about you through this person. And then we get to educate them. And then again, it just continues to circulate. But teaching a class, kind of helping others out, especially realtors, would be huge for them and for us and for you. And we all work together.
100%.
So-
I think it's a win-win for everybody
Yeah,
involved.
I think so.
And it's, pioneering is difficult.
Yeah.
And you guys are pioneers. I mean, whether you want to be or not, you
Sure.
are. So, I mean, you're on the forefront of this thing.
Yep.
So, and that's just, it's always going to be harder. And I mean, a lot of times, this is the hard part about it. A lot of times it's the people that come in afterwards that are the ones that crush it. You paved the way.
Yeah.
Sure. So that's something I'm sure you guys have in the forefront of your mind is to make sure you're not
Right.
those people,
Yeah.
and that you got the longevity. But I mean, I think same with us with financing. If we can stick around long enough to get everybody to know what we're doing here, and we've the first can be the best, and hopefully will be because we've been doing it longer than everybody else.
Yep.
You guys building them, us doing the financing,
Yep.
and then that partnership should be able to get Clark County,
Yeah.
well versed in
Yep.
doing this easy and just having a bunch of them all over the county. So that's
Absolutely.
what obviously our goal is. But that leads me to a question I have for you guys: is the more of these that are coming without expanding the footprint of Clark County, like just using what's already here, how does that impact, in your opinion? Like, I mean, where do people park that
Yeah.
are putting these extra things? I mean,
Yeah.
what kind of a burden does that, or impact, I should say, does that have on the fire department, on the police department, on the schooling?
Yeah, all the infrastructure
Yeah,
plays
I
into
mean-
all of this. Yeah, and I think that's what's getting considered at both the jurisdiction level and the state level as, we start to talk about housing crisis and density issues. Like, it's not just, is there a room for somebody to sleep in, but it's all these other things, just like you said. What about the schools? What about the parks? What about the fire department and the sewer department that now is, taking on, more households than was planned on. So all of the infrastructure has to kind of keep up with all of this. And I have talked to some leaders in some jurisdictions that are concerned about it. They're like, hey, look, from our perspective as a city, like, we have to be careful not to just say, yeah, everybody build as many ADUs as you want, because they said all of a sudden we're not going to be able to support that with our infrastructure. So you brought up parking. That's one of the things that the new state bill addresses. There's some differences between, whether, parking for an ADU will have to be required on site or whether it can be street parking. Most of the time it's going to be street parking. So it's going to impact, how many cars are parked on the street. It impacts, how many kids are walking to school or how many kids are at this bus stop, because all of a sudden now, if every single house in a neighborhood puts an ADU in, you just double the amount of households that you have in the
100%,
the neighborhood. And not that everybody's got a kid, or we're talking about a lot of maybe older retired
Sure.
couples moving in, but still the impact to that community is significant.
It is.
And so there's two sides to that coin, right? And as much as I think everybody should build an ADU because I think they benefit so much, like, we're also working here in the community that we live in, and we don't necessarily just want to, change everything, and so that's part of the effort that we take in our process is we want to design ADUs, we want to build ADUs in a way that don't negatively impact the neighborhood that they're in.
Awesome answer.
And so I mean, that's something that we're passionate about. Like, our tagline, for our company is improve life. Like, that's our point here, and that includes, the people we work for, the communities that we work in, the people we work with, our employees. We want to improve life, and we think that by building ADUs, we're doing that. And so, like, we really believe in what we're doing, but it does come with this tension of,
You got to think about a few
what's
things.
the impact of what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I've been through some neighborhoods in Portland that are pretty loose with having multiple addresses per lot. It's not fun to drive through those neighborhoods.
Sure,
Some of
sure.
the, you know what I mean? When it's like you got a car coming that way and you're coming this way, and one of you gets to go through.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because there's cars all the way down.
Right.
I'm looking at that. I'm like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
Over here. So, and I don't think it would get to that you know, but because we're not that dense,
Sure.
you know, over
Sure.
here. But it is something
Not
I've
yet.
thought about. It is something I've thought about, yeah. And
Yeah.
so I was just wondering how you guys are addressing that. But
If everybody puts a duplex in their backyard,
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
going to have an impact,
You know?
you know.
they're gonna. That's the answer to the housing crisis. And you have one family that moves into one family of 3 moves into one, and one family of 4 moves into the other duplex. Now you have 9 people between 2 dwellings plus the main house, which might have 4 or 5. So now
Yeah.
in one lot you have 12, 13 people.
Yep.
Impacting. That's got to impact the utilities.
Yeah.
It does,
You know,
yeah. The amount of water that you're using, the amount of electricity that you're using.
So that's a good question, because now each one would have its own meter. Is that how
Not
it works?
necessarily, no. Depends on the jurisdiction right now. But, you know, take City of Vancouver, for example. We're allowed to hook up to existing utilities.
Really?
So same power meter, same water meter,
I would not have guessed that. I
same
would have
sewer
thought-
lateral.
I would have thought it would have been a separate
Me
meter.
too.
For, yeah.
So,
Me
so
too.
that there's an option for that, you know, and we do that a lot with power. For electricity, many people want either, you know, a second service brought in for the ADU, just for electrical capacity on the property.
Sure.
And that's pretty easy to do, depending on the lot. But we don't have to.
Gotcha.
If there's room on the panel on the main house, we can run the ADU from the main house.
And then you're tying into the existing sewer line too.
Yeah.
Sewer.
Okay.
So what do you do when you're on septic?
So on septic, it gets a little tricky because
bet.
because septic systems are designed for, you know, obviously a certain capacity,
Number of
right?
bedrooms, right?
Exactly. So they
Yeah.
define that by number of bedrooms, and so depending on how the property is going to get used with the addition of the ADU, sometimes if the main house has less usage than it used to, then you can convert one of those bedrooms into an office. You know, if it's not needed to be a bedroom, if you're not going to have that many people living there, then you can convert that bedroom and then
Bonus
now,
room or a bedroom or an office, or
Yep.
not a bedroom, but
Yeah.
an office or
Yeah.
something else. Okay.
So then it frees up a bedroom designation on the septic that we can apply to the ADU
Wow.
without doing too many septic upgrades.
It sounds like a separate permit.
It does, but it's just a process actually with the assessor's office to do that.
Gotcha.
But then the other option is that we actually do add capacity to the septic system by adding an auxiliary tank at the ADU or maybe another drain field line
Okay.
for the drain field or leach field.
But then you're running into limitations on where you can put the
Lot
ADU.
size.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the
Yes.
septic has to have
Because
a
the
certain amount
septic,
of
yep.
setback.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, you have to have a certain distance from the septic, and then they also make you maintain a reserve area in case your septic fails. You have to have another place to put a new
Sure.
septic system in. So that is a little more tricky, and that's usually when you're working out in rural jurisdictions, when you're outside of the urban growth boundary.
But typically those are bigger lots, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah,
So
you
it's a give and take there.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Within the urban growth boundary, there are still certain neighborhoods that are still on septic. You know, even though there's city sewer close by, there are a few pockets in Clark County that
There
are
are.
still on septic.
Yep.
What's the hookup rule on that? I thought it was like
Yeah.
there was a rule about
Yeah,
it.
so there is a rule that if we build an ADU, then we have to hook the property up to
Both.
sewer.
Yeah.
Yeah, both the main house and the ADU then have to
Now
get
have to
hooked up
switch over
to sewer.
if it's within a certain distance.
Yeah.
Within a certain distance, yeah, but in general, and they even deal with that in this new House bill, is that they are going to allow jurisdictions to require that, like across the board, that if you
Wow.
if you build an ADU and you're within the urban growth boundary, it must be serviced by public sewer.
And then do you have to decommission and remove the septic? Or
Yeah,
do you just,
and that's a process of basically just you pump the septic tank, you break the bottom out of it, you fill it with sand, and that's decommissioning it.
okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like another permit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, if you're building an ADU, that's just all part of your plumbing permit. But
Gotcha.
They do inspect it, yes.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So what have we not asked you that you've been itching to tell the world about?
I know. Where's
By
our
the world,
list?
I mean all 12 of us that are going to watch this.
That's right.
I know.
That's right.
But you know what? There's going to be more. We're going to advertise it too. We're
No,
going
I
to
just tease it.
we're going
Of
to
course.
share it with our friends. I think there's many of our friends and family members are like, "What do you do again?" And they ask us. But
Well, you said something that was I wanted to jump back to is like most of the people who find out about you guys are from a neighbor who built an ADU because the neighbors are like, what are you guys building? They're
walking
like,
their
"Oh,
dog and snooping.
Yeah,
in
we're
the
moving my
backyard."
mom into the
Yeah.
backyard, and they're like, you can do that?
Yeah, we get a lot of good response from that. Like, we have people ask us all the time, like, do the neighbors get mad when you build an ADU? And the honest answer is no. Like, we don't have, like, the neighborhood doesn't typically get mad at us when we're in building. They're usually curious. We have a lot of good conversations and have built multiple units in the same neighborhood because of having been there and people seeing it.
My marketing brain just exploded for a second because I'm like, what we should do is take one of the ADUs that you built in a neighborhood and then do a postcard campaign to the rest of the neighbors
So we
saying,
do
like,
that.
hey,
on-
check it out.
We do that on most of our builds.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually on the majority of our builds, we do an open house for the neighborhood at the end of the build. So they've seen our sign in the front yard. They've seen the construction process for the past 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
And then we send a flyer out at the end and say, hey, come see it.
Yeah.
And we do a day or two where the neighborhood can come walk through it.
I went through the Ridgefield one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we advertise it too. We advertise it on our webpage and in other areas. We send out email to all current clients and people we've been talking with. But the majority of people that show up are neighbors. They all come with that flyer in their hand. They're like, I got this flyer and I've been watching you guys here.
Yep.
So they're curious. They're very curious.
It is. It's the curiosity
Yeah.
standpoint. Do you have to paint the house to match? Like,
You know, there are some rules that state that. We have
Okay.
not had any jurisdiction hold our feet to the fire on that yet. There's some language in a lot of the rules that say, you know, it has to match the style or characteristic of the main house.
Okay.
Some jurisdictions are even more specific. You know, they want the same roof pitch or something
Wow.
like that. We usually just, because we've pre-designed all of our plans, we usually are submitting what we have, and if they want it changed, we'll change it, but otherwise most of the time it just flies through.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, didn't know what he was doing over here.
No, I got it.
No.
There's 30 minutes on that camera. You have to reset it every 30
Oh,
minutes.
okay.
'cause-
Okay.
So that. I
And we can edit all this
That's
stuff.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Little thing on my watch that just says like, "Hey, don't forget
Get
to
ready.
restart the camera."
Yeah.
That one's 30 minutes too, but that's right. I don't need to be on camera. You guys do. Cool. Well, this was like super informative.
Yeah.
Like I think this is the answer to the housing crisis that I think Clark County is having right now.
But let's touch on that because we haven't
Sure.
talked about that.
Yeah.
Really. So let's touch on that. Bring that up, and what is your opinion on that? On the affordability of housing? How does
Sure.
this help solve that?
Yeah. Well, obviously it's in our face every day, right? Like, we don't have enough places for people to live. And even more so right here in Clark County than other parts of the country. We have people moving here every day, and we need places for them to live. So what this does is it actually does put more housing units in Vancouver without having to, rezone everything, start putting in even more multifamily complexes. This allows more units to go in zonings that have been zoned for single-family residences. And so all of a sudden, we just opened up the entire urban growth area to be able to add more units in a way that we couldn't before, because you were only allowed to have one house.
Right.
And now all of a sudden, we can have 2, and now even 3 if you add 2 ADUs. So I think it benefits hugely. And then with the prices in the market right now, what it does is it gives some lower cost housing. Not that ADUs are, super cheap, but it gives more rental opportunities. We're seeing, like we've talked about, we're seeing more families band together to pool their resources. And this is a great way to do that, and is inviting for families to do that now that everybody gets their own space.
Sure.
Right? Everybody gets their own house.
And you're still building wealth that way.
And
You're
they're
not
still,
renting.
exactly.
Yeah.
You're still building wealth. That's one other thing that we haven't touched on yet. One thing that's changed is that they're now allowing ADUs to be sold and purchased as condos. Which means, technically, and here again, I'm not the legal expert, but what I read in it is that now somebody could own the ADU without being the property owner. And the possibilities there are just go all over the place.
Right.
Wow. I can't even wrap my head around that.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
a lot.
Yeah.
Now I
That
can
is.
sell my 25-year-old son the condo that's in my backyard.
And he gets to build equity in that real estate at a price point cheaper than going and buying the house down the road.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's huge. That has the potential to change everything.
Yes.
How do you rezone the lot? I mean, how do
Well,
know?
you don't. So, yeah, and I am not. I'd love to talk to somebody that's an expert
Me
in
too.
condos and how that works. But somehow,
I'm struggling with it up here right
somehow
now.
it's gonna work.
Yeah. I mean, I can see it working, but I can
Yeah.
just see a lot of, I mean, so like backyard space. I mean, where do you draw the line? Is it just shared space now, or is it,
Right.
you know what I mean?
That's exactly it, yeah.
I don't know.
And if it's not sold to family, they sell it to somebody else that you don't like.
Yeah.
That's in your backyard, and they have
Yeah.
to use your side gate to get around. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
those kind of things.
exactly.
I can.
Yeah, there could.
There's a gray area there that's going to be the unknown, but it will work.
But I
Yeah.
But it's
sure.
unknown.
Yeah, but I think in changing some of these regulations, it's going to force some of that to get figured out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you got to start somewhere. We got to start with one step, and so I think that's going to provide an opportunity for somebody, younger people, to maybe purchase something
Yep.
rather than renting.
For
Get
sure.
in.
That
We're
wasn't
moving in
an
the right
option
direction,
before.
though.
Exactly.
That's for sure.
Yep.
I mean, we have the
Yep.
crisis. We all know it's here.
Yep.
Affordability is out of control.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm worried about my kids ever being able to afford a
Yeah.
home. You know,
Yep.
this solves the problem.
It
I mean,
does.
there's a real need for what you guys are doing
Yeah.
here in this community.
Yep.
This solves a huge problem.
Yeah.
So I'm really grateful for you guys, and I hope you're the ones that rise to the top and just own
Thanks.
this market
Thanks.
and absolutely crush it. And I hope
Yeah.
we can be a part of rising with you into
Same.
this,
Same.
Yep.
market, because I really do. I mean, I'm scared for so my parents have 2 extra houses, and not
Okay.
because they're great investors, just because my dad's kind of a hoarder, and so he never
Sure.
gets rid of anything.
Yeah.
But they've turned into these huge assets for us, and
Mhm.
I'm like, I mean, for my kids and my nieces and nephews and
Yeah.
stuff, I'm like, they might not be able to afford. I mean, if things keep going like this,
Mhm.
I hate to say it, but it's
Yeah.
looking like the haves and the have-nots are. The middle
Yeah.
class is just going away,
It is.
right?
It really
and so
is.
you got the working poor, and you're getting the rich elite,
Yep.
and most of us are getting caught in the middle.
That's right. Yeah.
And so this solves such a big problem. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
all for it. Whatever you guys need help with moving any initiatives forward or
Cool.
anything like that, call on us too, because we definitely want to be a part of
Cool.
this. It does.
Yeah.
It solves a lot
Yeah.
of problems. I'm seeing people talking about just today on Yahoo News that
Mhm.
they was talking about 40, 50, 60, 100-year mortgages are what they're going to start rolling out.
Holy
That's
cow.
insane, yeah.
Because
Wow.
people can't afford these payments.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
only way to
100
get
years is
into it
Yep.
is you're going to have to extend the term out.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Even
Insane.
extending the term out to 40 years, you're lowering your payment. What, maybe
It's
50
not
bucks a
that
month?
much,
Yeah.
but I mean, and we've seen 40 years.
Mhm.
They've come and gone with,
Right.
the 08 stuff, but
Yeah.
50, 75, 100 years?
Yeah, that's insane.
Like I remember when car payments, like a regular car payment was like 4 years,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden it was like 5 years. I'm
Yep.
seeing like 8-year
Yeah,
car
I've
payments.
seen one at 15.
The
car
I've seen a
payment?
car payment, a car loan at 15 years. I was like,
Must have been a pretty
Unbelievable.
expensive
Like-
car.
That's like an RV.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
RV.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's,
So that's their solution, is just extend the terms. Banks make more money, right? Because they raise the interest rate to
Yeah.
extend the term out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're all winning on it, But yeah, you're never going to have that thing paid off.
Yeah. No.
So, yeah, I love what you guys are doing.
I think it all goes again back to the education part. Is if we can help educate, you guys can help educate, because I'm thinking about it now, and a lot of people aren't aware of what you can do with an ADU. They see a tiny home on the TV and they're like, oh, that'd be a fun idea, but they don't realize what you can do with that tiny home.
Yeah.
And so, like we were talking about with family, you build it for your parents. Someday you have to say goodbye to mom and dad, but then your kids get to utilize it, and then it continues to go on and on. Maybe then you move into it and your kids get the main house.
Yeah.
Right.
And it just is a recirculating asset to your whole entire
Turn your main
property,
house into
to your
an
family.
Airbnb.
Yes,
For sure.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to do the snowbird thing, you can
Yes.
move into the ADU,
Mm-hmm.
rent this out.
I never even thought of the snowbird thing. Like, that's perfect case scenario right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
That is perfect.
It is perfect.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing I was thinking of, I don't know why I was thinking about this, but like people with kids with disabilities that they'll never be able to fully move out on their own.
That is a
they're
huge one.
functioning enough where it would be really great to have a little separation for the parents.
We
finally.
just actually finished a unit this summer for that exact situation, where they moved their son into the backyard. He got some of his the independence,
Yep.
his space. He's
Yep. Yeah.
functional,
Freedom
but he's
a
still
little bit.
close. And there are cool things that you could do with that we explored in that process of like connecting the smoke alarms to the main house or something. Like there are things
yeah.
that you can do.
Maybe
to
lowering the
actually-
cabinets to a certain level.
We've got another one that we're just we're pulling final inspection on this week. That is a wheelchair accessible unit. So we did all the low cabinets and the roll under sinks and the roll in shower and all of that. So so we're set up to do all of those things to help equip people to take care of their loved ones in the way that they want
We're
to.
going to see a lot more of that in the future,
Yeah.
by the way.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah.
I read a staggering statistic the other day that talked about the amount of boomers that were moving into extended living or moving in with their children, and it's a huge strain. I don't know if you guys have been through that, but it is a huge strain on a family to be able to have somebody move in, and they don't have their own space anymore. And I wish this would have been an option for me 5 years ago. It would have been an absolute godsend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that your ideal demographic too? Is that what you're seeing more as multifamily?
We are.
Yeah.
Yep.
A lot of the marketing and sharing with others, 3 years ago, we talked a lot about rental benefits of how it would pan out if you did this and why it would be so great to have an ADU. People would rather live in an ADU in your backyard than an apartment where you have somebody above you and beside you and pounding on the walls and stuff. But we've seen, like Luke was saying, 90% of our people that we build with, it's for a family member. Yeah. We just built one for my mother-in-law. And again, it's the same thing. We shared a kitchen and shared a house for 6 months during the build, and I'm so thankful we have our own space again because we love each other more with a wall between us.
Yeah,
sure.
So
on that point, we kind of walk the walk of what we talk. Amanda's got the ADU on her property. I'm actually currently living in one of our units that's on a family member's property.
Oh, cool.
So I am experiencing even living, what it's like living in one of our smaller units. I've got a 450 square foot unit that I'm living in.
Wow.
And it's wonderful. I love it. So I'm not afraid to promote this because I know it works.
Less to clean,
Yeah.
less to heat,
Yeah, exactly.
less to maintain.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I like what you were touching on about just with technology. I mean, if you have people, instead of the care, like we brought up earlier, $5 to $10,000 a month.
Yeah.
And sometimes people, they don't need that much. But if you had, even depending on how much privacy they wanted, you could have cameras. You could have, just ways to talk to them without,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And see what's going on and the smoke
Absolutely.
detectors and all that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
it drives each other nuts, though. Our smoke alarm, when we were redoing ours, it went off, and then Mom's went off, and I could hear hers going off, and she would be like, why is it going off again? But just laugh about it. But it's a good thing for them. And
Absolutely.
it keeps them
Yeah.
safe. Again, it lets them have their own space. You can wave at each other in the mornings. You don't always have to be knocking on each other's doors saying, are you okay? Are you doing okay? But you know that they're safe and okay and well and all that.
There's so much value in that too. I can't tell you how many times I've made the drive to my mom's house and just being like, man, I hope she had a good night,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
And how
Stressful.
quick you can get to them too, because just a couple of years ago, I was at work at our previous office, and I got a call. My mom's like, "I just fell down the stairs."
Oh.
That feeling that
Yeah.
you're like,
Right.
you just drop everything and go.
Right. Yeah.
And
You
it was
can't
just
get there fast
the
enough.
panic that sunk in. Well, if she was in my backyard, you know what I mean? It solves
Yeah.
so many
It
problems.
really
Yeah.
does.
It solves so many problems.
Yeah.
So.
It's a
I love
blessing,
it.
yeah. It's a blessing for you guys, and it's a blessing for the person you're doing it for also. If it's a family member, like Luke was talking about, the family that we just did it for, they built it for their son. To him, it's a huge blessing. He loves to do music. He makes great music. And so he gets to have his own space. He's an adult now, and so it's a really cool experience for him. And seeing how excited he was about it, it makes the parents even more thankful and blessed that they did it.
For
And
sure.
again, they're just giving something to their family that their family wouldn't have been able to have gotten on their own.
Right.
Yeah.
Should go do a video on that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah.
And
Well-
then
Really
the
good case
long-term
study.
gain of this
Yeah.
financially, though, the long-term gain. I mean, you're only getting more benefit
Right.
as this thing goes on. You know what I
Right.
mean? With value of
Yeah.
of your house. So there's no downside. to
No,
it,
there's really not.
You know,
Yeah.
if you can afford to get in.
Right, exactly. And
Up
you know,
front.
we haven't really touched on that yet in this conversation of like, what
Yeah.
does an ADU cost? You know, and like I said, you've got all the products to be able to finance it,
Yeah.
which is great. But one thing, you know, when you ask, what do people need to know? A misconception that we get a lot is actually what an ADU costs,
Yeah.
because
They're not 50 grand.
they're not 50 grand.
Yeah, exactly.
They're really not 100 grand.
Yep.
Our cheapest product is around 200.
Yeah.
And that's where it starts for a small one, and it goes up to, 300 and above. But even that, and we get a lot of like, I tell people that, and they're like, "Whoa, I had no idea." And yet, if you compare that in context with the market that we're in, like, where are you gonna go buy a house for 200 grand?
Not.
You're not.
Yeah, especially
Where
a
are you
brand
gonna
new
go buy
house.
a house for 300
And the
grand?
neighborhood, though, you're going to
not.
get it in.
And the
Yeah.
neighborhood,
'Cause,
exactly.
Yeah, you're going to be putting it
So,
in a higher quality
even though it
neighborhood.
sounds like, oh, like we're not just putting a shed in the backyard. Like, this is a house. It's a full livable house, and you're getting it for way less than you'd go buy the fixer upper that needs to be gutted and totally remodeled.
For sure. And it's brand new.
And it's brand spanking new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
And
comes
you
with
can have-
everything.
There's
Everything.
some with
Yeah,
garages.
Yep, we do.
I
You know?
I saw
Yeah,
that.
we have
Yeah.
some 800 square foot units with a little one-car garage
That's
that are
unbelievable.
just
Yeah.
adorable, and they, 2-bedroom, big old kitchen. They live way bigger than you think they would.
Yeah.
The vaulted ceilings
Yeah.
too. The vaulted
Yep.
ceilings make it feel so much bigger.
We design in a way that we try to maximize the feeling of the space. Because there again, you don't want to live in something that feels cramped, even
Right.
though it's a small space. So we put the effort into building things that are enjoyable to live in.
Well, when we saw the one with the garage, we both went to the same place. We were like, "Oh, all those places down in like
Downtown,
downtown, yeah, downtown,
Yeah.
Mhm.
north of downtown, that have like the alleyways in the back
Yep.
with the
Yeah.
garages.
Yeah.
Like that,
Yep.
that'd be perfect. So you would have to
Totally.
actually come in and maybe do some demo
Mhm.
at the same time.
And we
So-
do that fairly
Yeah.
often, where we'll replace an existing, detached garage with one of our units.
Because you're not grandfathered in with those old setback rules, right? You have to.
Well, we weren't, but this new regulation does. You can,
Oh.
especially
Yeah.
those. So now a property that abuts an alleyway, a public alleyway, you're allowed to build on the property line of the alleyway, just
No
like those
way.
old garages.
Just like the garage, yep.
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 So actually, one thing that we've done to address those garages specifically, a lot of those old garages are 24 by 24.
Yep.
So we actually have a unit that fits that footprint.
That's
that-
exactly what we saw.
And so that's
We were both
exactly
like,
why we designed it that way, because now anybody that has one of those old garages, you could set this ADU in exactly that same spot, and it doesn't impact your yard at all.
Right.
Because it's just replacing the building that you
And
have.
now you still have a garage, and you have an ADU
Yep.
on top of it, or
Yeah.
man cave
Yeah.
or she shed,
or garage or not. Like we
Office.
can build some of those. In fact, just about any of our units, we could put a garage under. And so that 24
Yeah,
by 24.
with the height restrictions gone.
Yeah, exactly. With the height restrictions gone,
under
we
and-
can do 2-story just
Yeah.
about anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't move your elderly parents into a 2-story.
No.
No.
Yeah.
just-
No.
No, don't do
That
that.
doesn't
They get
work.
the house.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's some challenges associated
Yeah.
with that. Just saying.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the downtown stuff, that, I mean, to me, just for an investment standpoint, my
Yeah.
mind was like, because, I mean, downtown's just getting started. I know it's that whole waterfront area is amazing right
It
now,
is.
but it's still,
It is
Yeah.
10
still,
years from now,
I
we're
know.
going to be like, oh, I wish I would have bought in 2023.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I
going to
agree.
happen again. It's going to
Yep.
happen again.
It's coming.
It is.
It's
So
coming.
those right now, having a 2-unit income property in downtown Vancouver
Forget
right
about
now,
Yeah.
forget it.
You're not even going to be able to find. It's going to be like a San Francisco thing here.
That's where you
know.
Airbnb it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to want to come visit.
100%.
Yep.
We're there.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people, which is so weird to me that people. We used to be Vantucky. I mean, you guys
I
been
know.
around
Oh,
long enough.
absolutely.
We were
yeah.
Vantucky.
Yeah, all my Portland
Vantucky.
friends always made fun of me for being
Yeah.
north of the river, and now they're like, "Hey, we come over to the new waterfront."
I
I'm
know.
like,
That's my waterfront.
That's
You're
right.
not
Yeah,
allowed
dude,
up here.
Yeah.
You're from
you
Portland.
didn't want that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
funny.
Now you're making fun of them for living in
Yeah.
Portland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, how things have
A lot of
changed.
migration from Portland to Vancouver
Yeah.
right now too. So
Yeah.
Yep.
yeah. Well, I appreciate having you guys on here. Like I
Absolutely.
think there's
Thanks
so
for
many
having
so many
us.
great nuggets
Yeah.
from this. I think just like spreading the love and making sure that people know about this and like what the possibilities are, especially with the new changes. We'll do this again when they
Yeah.
when the new changes come
Yeah.
out. We'll be like,
Yeah,
okay,
definitely.
what's new? What's the update?
Yep.
What's changed? We
Yep.
could build 4 in our backyard
Right.
now.
Yeah.
We could build 10 in our
Yes.
backyard now. That'd be
Got a
great.
high-rise.
Yeah, high-rises, ADU high rises.
Before ADUs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Underground ADUs.
There we
Oh,
go.
my goodness.
Cool.
Good.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks
Yeah,
for coming
absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
This is
Yep.
great.
So that's that.